Hello, hello. Welcome. I hope you've grabbed your drink of choice. Mine is, does anyone else do this but me? Put butter in their coffee? So, my drink of choice, yes, is actually a mushroom coffee with butter and maple syrup, a little bit of half and half, and some protein powder. So, I figure it's a good excuse to drink something that I love and I'm getting in protein. So that's my drink of choice. Anyone else? Uh, what do you what do you have in your cup or your glass? I would love if you can hear me to put in the chat, make sure that I am coming through loud and clear. Today we're talking about it is not your job to make or keep other people happy. And if I have time, we'll go through 15, we'll go through them pretty quickly. 15 behaviors. Oh, cool. Paris mommy. Um, you have Doe's mushroom coffee and my coffee. That's awesome. You love it. Uh, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, mine is called, oh, now I won't be able to remember the name. It comes in little packets, individual packets. Myco brew, I think is what it's called. I've tried a bunch of different mushroom coffees, and most of them tasted kind of uh, too earthy for me, I guess, is a good way to put it. And I found this one, and I love it. I almost crave it in the morning. I love coffee though, anyway. So, um, but this is a little boost. I typically, if I drink coffee, I drink decaffeinated if I drink regular coffee. So, but I always, if I can, put butter and, like I said, butter, protein powder, and a little maple syrup as my sweetener in my coffee. So, anyway, yeah, cheers to you. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. So, we are talking about, oh, and it's hot. I just made it, and I have a little coffee warmer beside my desk, because the mushroom coffee doesn't taste great when it's cold. Decaf for me too, due to anxiety. All right. Well, thanks for being here. Let maybe we can heal some of that anxiety. Curious to know if you put it in the chat, like what do you feel like is what triggers your anxiety, or is it something in particular, or is it kind of a common overall feeling that you have of anxiousness? But if you were taught to be a people pleaser, to be nice, to think about other people's feelings before your own, to put other people first, that can cause anxiety because then we grow up into adults who think that everybody else's opinion, that their needs, that their thoughts, that their wants and desires and preferences are more important than our own. And so we're constantly on alert to make sure that they're taken care of and that they're happy. Does that make sense? And so our brain and our body are not disconnected, right? They're one unit. So many times people think that there's no connection between the mind body, but there is absolute connection. We are one whole unit that works together. So if you are thinking, that someone else is unhappy and you were taught to be the peacekeeper, then that taught your body, those thoughts, those beliefs taught your body to stay in a constant um nervous system dysregulation. So it taught you to it just became habitual to be in this fight or flight. Also, there's freeze or fawn, which fawn is the real people pleasing. That's where we start morphing ourselves to be we want what we think other people want us to be. And we're going to talk about that today. So that's perfect that you brought up anxiety. That was a perfect lead into this. Again, I'm curious to know if if that tracks for you. Does that resonate for you? Were you raised to be someone who was taught to always put other people first, and so you put yourself on the back burner, and now as an adult, it's really difficult, right, to think that we're not being selfish when we put ourselves first, when we do something for ourselves. But I talked about that in another live, that selfish is not the definition that we were taught that it is. Truly being selfish, if you look up the definition, if you Google selfishness, it will say something like putting yourself first at the detriment to other people. That is not what people pleasers do. We're not doing it to the detriment of other people. We're doing it to the detriment of ourselves. That is not selfishness. That is selflessness. And if you think about self being selfless, that means without self. So we're always being what we think other people want us to be. We're not being the self, and that can cause a lot of anxiety. Paris Mommy said, "My anxiety comes from aging and not having people to take care of me if that should happen because I've always been the caretaker. I now am afraid there won't be anyone there for me." Oh my gosh. I just had this conversation with someone yesterday, a coach that I was in a session with myself. I get coaching too. And I brought that up to her because I'm single, I'm solo, I live alone. Um, and that is becoming, as I'm aging, like you said, that is becoming a thought for me is what if I fell in my house? Not that I'm, not that I'm um, not physically fit, but things happen. I live in a two-story house. Things happen. What if I fell and nobody knew about it? So yeah, I totally get that. The thing I would say about that is how is the anxiety helping you, right? It's not. And I would invite you to look at, which is what I'm doing, look at how can I how can I set myself up in my life to to not have those fears, right? Because I I don't have to live in that fear, right? There are things I can do. There are the Apple Watch, which I don't have one, but it will alert someone if you fall. There is also an app I just read about that has you can check in with this app as often as you want. Like you set up a cadence to check in with this app, and it will alert the friends that you tell it to alert if you don't check in. So maybe that's something to look into, right? Um, but I'm with you. I hear you. The anxiety, yes, makes it so much worse. So I am hypnosis certified, and so I listen to because I know now through getting certified the power of the subconscious mind. And so if we constantly reinforce that fear, that anxiety, that is what the subconscious mind believes to be true. And again, the mind and the body are connected, right? So then the body starts feeling because the mind is saying, oh my gosh, there's a tiger chasing me. That's what living in fear and anxiety is like. We think there's actual danger when there's not actual danger, right? But our mind and body don't know the difference. So by using some hypnosis tools, some pattern interrupt tools, there's some really simple 1 to 2 minute tools that you can use that every time you notice you're having an anxious thought, you can break that thought because it's a habit to think this. And so, like any habit, it takes some time to break that habit and implement a new one, right? So we're breaking the habit of thinking, oh my gosh, what's going to happen to me if I fall in my house, right? If I think that enough times, my brain, my mind and body will make it true. So I want to stay out of that thought pattern and not make it a habit to continue to think that because it will become my reality. And so again, there are different tools that you can learn. And if you're interested in that, let's have a conversation about how I could help you with that, with those anxious thoughts. Because I offer coaching and my calendar link is down in the description. You can book a free call. We can talk about what options you have, what things you could do if that's, if that's fitting for you, if that's something you want to do at this time in your life. So let's get back to the topic at hand. It's not your job to keep other people happy. And you, Paris Mommy, you said that, you've always been the caretaker, right? So especially for women, when we were raised to not hurt other people's feelings, make sure that they were taken care of, make sure that other people are happy, make sure they're comfortable, then we end up growing into the adults who are always the fixers, the peacekeepers, the caretakers of others, right? We make it our responsibility to keep them happy. And that is devastating. I lived it for almost 55 years of my life. It got me into 3 marriages and 3 divorces because I was always worried about whether the other person was happy. Because if they weren't happy, if I disappointed them or they disapproved of what I said or what I did, my fear was I would be rejected. But look what happened as an outcome of that people pleasing pattern was I got divorced 3 times because the relationships weren't they how do I say this? I got myself into those relationships with my people pleasing, with my fear of disappointing people. Now I've broken that through realizing and through doing a lot of work on myself, my self esteem, my self love, my self acceptance, knowing that I don't need other people's approval to live my life. But again, when we were taught to be people pleasers, that's what ends up happening is that we put other people first. We think our needs don't matter, our thoughts don't matter. We think we're not going to be believed with what we bring up. And so we just stay silent. And so, this list that I'm going to give you today are 15 things that we do that keep us stuck in people pleasing. So, I'm wondering who here has ever bit their tongue to keep the peace, been nice to get approval, to be liked, to be accepted, to fit in, right? Is that you? Exactly, Paris Mommy. Eventually the real person comes through and your partner doesn't even know who you are, right? Because and we're going to talk about that. We morph ourselves, we become the best chameleons in order to fit in and to be liked and to be accepted. But if they're accepting me, who are they really actually accepting? Right? They're not accepting the real me. They're accepting the mask that I'm wearing. And so when I take off my mask and I actually speak up, which usually when we've people pleased for so long and pushed down all of our emotions and our thoughts and our feelings and our wants and our needs and our hurts, right? What happens? It comes out in this huge explosion. And so then the other person's like, whoa, that's never happened before. Who are you? And if you're with a toxic person, which is what this type of behavior can attract, then the toxic person suddenly has just exactly what they want. They have you in the corner and they have you defending yourself. And they have um basically a weapon to use against you. Wow, you blew up. I don't know where that came from, right? And I don't want to get into that today. I've talked about that in other videos about narcissistic personality disorder and how when we are people pleasers, we attract, we magnetize that type of personality. And that is very devastating. I have lived it. I lived it. My 3rd marriage was that. So, do you bite your tongue to keep the peace? Are you being nice instead of telling your truth? I was told I don't know how many times when I was young, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all, right? Are you afraid of what other people will think if you speak your truth, if you speak up, if you um say what you feel, say what you want, say what you need, say that someone hurt you? Are you afraid that you'll be judged and that they may reject you for doing that? Do you morph yourself? My biggest people pleasing hurdle to overcome was the fear of disappointing someone. And I can trace this back now. I didn't realize it at the time as I was, getting into adulthood. I didn't know that I was people pleasing. I didn't realize that I was doing this, but I can track it back to when I was really young that I had this fear always of disappointing someone, and that if I disappointed them, and of course I didn't think about this logically or consciously, but it got stuck in the subconscious mind that if I disappointed them, that I wasn't loved, that I wasn't a good person, that I was bad, that I would be rejected or abandoned. And the subconscious mind, its main job is to keep us alive and to keep us safe. And so we develop these patterns of behavior that do just that. They allow us to cope when we're young with these things that our little sponges of brains don't have the ability to to analyze, right? And say, wait, if I speak up, someone will reject me, right? But as a young child, we don't have that analytical ability. We don't have the physical capacity to take care of ourselves. So when we're young, we depend on our caregivers. And if we are if we are in a situation, my parents were loving, they were caring, but they were emotionally not demonstrative. So I felt like I was constantly, I can see this now as an adult, but I felt like I was constantly seeking their approval, their acceptance because I didn't hear it from them. I didn't sense it from them. And so I was constantly like being the nice girl, being the good girl in order to like kind of test out, am I is this behavior okay? Is this, and so I learned to not speak up. So that was my biggest people pleasing hurdle was the fear of disappointing someone. Oh, and I was saying, so our subconscious mind, its job is to keep us safe. You don't think about breathing, right? You don't say, okay, breathe. Okay, take another breath, right? You don't say, okay, heart, beat, beat again, beat again. It just happens automatically. And that is all run by the subconscious. Our bodies and minds are so amazing. When you think about it, like we don't, I don't do any of that. It's being done to me, right? My heart is being beated. My breathing is being breathed. I'm not breathing, I am being breathed. I'm not living, I'm being lived. And so our subconscious mind, that's its job, and is to keep us alive. And then its secondary job, which falls right behind that, is to keep us safe. And what it knows as safe is what's known. So, what were we taught when we were young? Most likely not, we weren't taught it directly, we were taught it indirectly, right? Through things that we observed, through things we heard, through other people's behavior. Uh, so the subconscious mind knows what's safe, or it thinks what's safe is by what's known, what's predictable. So if you had something happen to you over and over and over when you were young, then that is predictable to the subconscious mind. Or if you were told something, I just talked to um, a client recently in her clarity call, and she said that she was told over and over when she was young that she was um, ugly is the one thing I remember. There were two things, that you're ugly, and now I don't remember the other one, but that is devastating, right? To hear that over and over, and the subconscious mind can't, it doesn't know true from false. So whatever it hears, it takes in as true. It doesn't, it can't logic things. It can't say, wait a minute, you are not ugly, right? So it takes in everything that it experiences and hears and sees as truth. And so she grew up thinking that she was ugly and stupid. I think that was the other thing. So, obviously, very devastating behavior and a very devastating pattern that she learned. She didn't she didn't purposefully learn it, right? It just went in as what was predictable, and then she learned behaviors in order to cope with it. People-pleasing behaviors, playing small, not talking back, not speaking your truth, because that was the way as a little girl that she could cope and stay safe, right? That's all she knew how to do. And so now she's working her way out of that and repatterning those behaviors, those beliefs, because the behaviors come from the beliefs. So I don't know what the anxiety causes you to do, what behaviors it causes you to have, but there is a belief at the core of that anxiety that is keeping you stuck in those behaviors. Just like for me, I developed people pleasing behaviors of not speaking up, of not saying no, of doing things to be approved of, to not disappoint someone. Those behaviors, once I figured out that's what was happening as a 55-year-old adult, I figured that out. I went to Codependence Anonymous for 3 years, and I figured out, because I started realizing these behaviors were really harming me. They were really detrimental to my life. And so I went to work on trying to change the behaviors, and the behaviors wouldn't change. Why is that? Because we don't change our behaviors without looking at the beliefs that are driving the behaviors. It's like the belief is the passenger in the car. I mean, sorry, the behavior is the passenger in the car. The belief is what's driving the car. The belief is the driver. So the passenger, the behavior can say, "Wait, no, turn there." The belief is like, "Oh no, this is the path we're going down. This is what I know. This is the pattern, and we're staying on that pattern." Until we can look at the beliefs and rewire those beliefs, the behaviors will not change. So that is a great thing to look at. And most of our beliefs are in our blind spots. I didn't know that I believed that I wasn't worthy, that I wasn't deserving of someone who could I didn't believe that I was deserving of love, I'll just say it that way, or of respect, or of acceptance without me performing for it, right? That's what people pleasing is. It's a performance that keeps us in these people pleasing patterns because we perform, we get applause for our performance, right? If you look at it kind of like a play, right? You perform, you be the way the audience wants you to be, the people in your life. You get applause, you get approval, you get validation for what you're doing. So you continue to perform, but that's the behavior. And it's based on I'm not going to be liked, I'm not going to be approved of, I'm not going to be validated or cheered for if I don't perform. So looking at the beliefs again, which usually are in the blind spots, we don't even know we have the beliefs that we have. It took me working with someone else to help me and going to Codependence Anonymous to help me like root out these beliefs. And sometimes they're painful. It's painful to think, holy crap, I've been dependent on someone else to feel loved and acceptance because I don't believe it myself. I don't believe that I'm worthy of it. That's painful to look at, right? So, having someone to support you in that can be very, very helpful. First of all, to help you find those beliefs. And then, secondly, to help you navigate through them and rewire them and get to the other side where that belief isn't so strong anymore. So, let's get into my biggest people pleasing fear, my biggest people pleasing hurdle, sorry, was the fear of disappointing someone. And so I realized there were things that I needed to stop doing, these people pleasing behaviors and beliefs that I wanted to stop doing and I needed to stop doing in order to break free of always being dependent on other people. And uh one of those was thinking it was my job to keep other people happy. Oh, I missed. So Lee said, sometimes I really think about not to disappoint other people, and I really try to avoid it if it's not necessary. Of course, we don't want to disappoint people, right? But there's a big difference between purposefully hurting them and disappointing them. Saying that and acting in ways to not disappoint people means that I am taking on their reaction and their emotions. So let's talk about that. Let me see if I can skip to the one. Uh, no, I'm just going to go through these. So again, there's a huge difference between allowing them to have their emotions and their feelings and their reactions and feeling like you're responsible for that. And when we feel like we're responsible for other people's emotions and their reactions, then we behave in ways that are for their benefit to keep them comfortable versus for our own benefit and for our own truth, I would say, for our own growth. What happens is we think they're going to be uncomfortable, right? Or we're uncomfortable speaking our truth. And so we just don't. And it might disappoint someone for me to tell them, hey, that really hurt my feelings, right? But I am, if I don't speak that, first off, it's because I'm trying to keep them comfortable because I don't want to, I don't want them being uncomfortable, right? They might they might reject me if I tell them that. And I don't want the discomfort of speaking my truth because I think it's wrong. And so many times we avoid the discomfort, whether it's the other person's or ours, in order to keep the peace. But the only peace that it keeps is theirs. Because what happens is when you push down how you feel enough, you are going to cause yourself to become resentful. You're going to be resentful that you're not speaking up. You're going to be resentful toward yourself for always being the one to take things on, always being the one to not rock the boat. And you're going to start being resentful to them because you're going to feel like they're causing you to be upset, and that because you're so afraid of disappointing them, you're not speaking up. It's like a vicious cycle, right? You're afraid to disappoint them, to upset them, to make them angry, so you don't speak up. So then you start to become resentful because you're not able to speak your truth, you're not able to speak up, and you become resentful to them because you feel like they're causing you to not be able to speak up because maybe they always react harshly when you speak up. Well, I encourage you to look at that relationship, right? Once we start speaking our truth, we find out who other people truly are. Like Paris Mommy said, eventually the real person comes through, right? And your partner doesn't know who you are anymore. And you might think that's a bad thing, but when we start speaking our truth kindly, I'm not saying we're doing this in a mean way, but when we start speaking our truth, that allows the other person to show us who they really are. So let's get into the 15 things. For the 15th time, I'm actually going to get into the list. So, what we need to do, 15 things that will help break free from this people pleasing pattern of always worrying about keeping other people happy. The first one is to stop adjusting or withholding your opinions to keep the peace. And we talked about this a little bit already. You don't speak up, not because you're easy to get along with or you're just accepting people for who they are, but because you don't want the conflict or the tension, right? You don't want them to feel uncomfortable and you don't want to feel uncomfortable yourself. And you'd rather not rock the boat. So that's what being nice is, not rocking the boat, not speaking your truth. Number two, we have to stop being compliant, stop being the what I call the queen of second chances, right? Once people show you who they are, believe them. That's a saying, right? When we stop being compliant and stop morphing ourselves and stop being the chameleon and speaking our truth, again, we're going to speak it with kindness. When we stop being the queen of second chances and speaking up the first time, you will find out who truly loves you for you and will stick with you while you work through breaking free of people pleasing, breaking free of this prison. You'll find out the people that love you and accept you for who you are and who you want to become, not for just who you are for them, what you give them, what you provide for them. Number three, stop covering up your truth with niceties, right? Again, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. I was taught that, and I know a lot of women in midlife were taught that also when they were young. If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. And so we learned to not speak up. Or when we did, it had to be very, again, very performative, very nice and good girl. And so stop covering up your truth with these niceties. Start speaking your truth with kindness. Saying what you think others want to hear keeps you small. So speak honestly. Again, know that it's going to be uncomfortable, especially at first while you're breaking free from this, but you have to. You have to be willing to sit in that discomfort and let them sit in theirs. Don't try to cover it up and shrink back and go back into your comfort zone, right? That's what our comfort zone is, not being uncomfortable. And again, our brain, our subconscious thinks that that's safe. And so we have to purposefully, consciously do things to break that pattern. We can't just wake up one morning. We won't wake up one morning and say, "Okay, I'm just going to I'm going to sit in my discomfort." It won't work because the subconscious is like, "Oh no, that's not safe to do that. Here's a reason why you shouldn't," or 10 or 20 or 100 reasons. And you that negative self-talk starts again and tells you why you shouldn't do that. So you have to consciously break free of that. While I'm thinking about it, um, there is I will put this in the description. I have a free audio that's called I Honor My Needs. That would be a great audio to download and listen to every day if you can, because it will start to help you. It's another tool that you can use to break free of these automatic patterns that we've gotten into. It's just as automatic. These beliefs, these thoughts are just as automatic as putting on your seatbelt when you get in the car. You have to consciously think about not putting on your seatbelt because you do it, you start the car automatically. You don't even think about doing it, right? It's like if you've ever driven a stick shift car, a manual car, when you first learned how to drive that, it took some concentration, right? Of, okay, pressing the clutch, put it in gear, slowly let out the clutch while putting on the gas. And especially if you're going up a hill, right? It takes really deep concentration of doing it at first. And that is what it takes to break free of these automatic patterns, these beliefs, these thoughts, these negative, they're called ants, automatic negative thoughts. So it takes some concentration of to do that and some focus of doing that. And this audio will help you. It's another tool that you can use to reprogram. So I will put that in the description. It's not in there now, I don't believe. Um, Honor needs audio. Making myself a note, otherwise I'll forget. Okay, where was I? Stop covering up your truth with niceties. Stop fearing, number 4, stop fearing how others perceive you. Their opinions don't define you. But again, we learned this behavior, this subconscious thought when we were young to always be on the alert, especially if you were taught to be nice or good, to be on the alert for how other people perceived us. And now as adults, if we lived that pattern and haven't broken that pattern, we are always going to look externally for, what do they think about me? What do they think about, what will people think if I do this? If I start my own business, if I start this hobby, if I want to go hike the Camino Trail in Europe, like, what will people think, right? We grow up, and that's a true story from a client that I had. She wanted to hike the Camino Trail, but her family was telling her, "You'll never be able to do it." And she just did it a couple of months ago. So, like 77 miles, I think she went. And so she finally, after years, she's in her 60s, after years, she was able to break free of that belief that she had that she would never be able to do it, that she wasn't physically capable, right? And people were telling her this outside of her, and she started to believe it herself. And I helped her reprogram that belief and have the belief in herself and know that she could trust her own self, her own body, to do whatever it was that she wanted to do. Okay, so stop fearing, right? Again, and this isn't as easy as just saying, "Okay, I'm gonna stop fearing how other people perceive me." I have to go in and look at the beliefs that drive that behavior to always look externally, outside of me for their approval. Um, so number 5, stop overlooking or tolerating hurtful behavior. Right? Again, this comes from a belief. If you're tolerating other people's bad behavior, this comes from a belief that you don't deserve to be treated any differently. And that most likely came from um, things that you experienced when you were young. Just like my the woman said about, always being told she was stupid and ugly as a kid, right, we can't say, you know, "That's not okay to say that to me," or we can't walk away from the family because how would we survive, right? So these became survival tools that we built, but now we're adults and we can protect ourselves. There is no tiger chasing us. There's no bear or lion behind us that we have to protect ourselves from. Number 6 is stop immediately jumping in to fix things. I think someone said um, in the chat, sometimes I really think about not disappointing other people and try to avoid it, right? So we we act in ways not true to ourself in order to keep another person happy. So I want you to pause before reacting and check in if you're acting out of genuine care, or are you trying to control how someone feels about you so that they don't reject you or they don't disapprove of you, or that they can feel more comfortable so that you can feel more comfortable? Number 7, stop assuming guilt when someone's unhappy, right? It's not your job to keep them happy. And the guilt is not it's not a good compass to go by. We were taught guilt and shame. We weren't given that. We weren't born that way. Your whatever higher power that you believe in, they did not give us guilt and shame. We were taught guilt and shame. That was a bad thing to do, right? Apologize to your friend, apologize to your brother, right? We were taught guilt and shame. So, stop assuming guilt when someone's unhappy. You you living your life and living in the way that you want to live your life may disappoint someone else, right? But that does not mean that you're doing something wrong. We morph ourselves so often. We change who we are. We put on a mask, right? We become a chameleon. And I was the best one in order to keep other people comfortable and to keep ourselves comfortable. Number 8, stop over explaining your decisions. You can say no, you can decide to not go to Thanksgiving. For instance, we have Thanksgiving coming up in the United States, right? This is a great time to practice some of these things and start to look at, what beliefs do I have about myself? What behaviors do I have that are causing me harm? And then start looking at them. Maybe you're invited to a Thanksgiving gathering that you just aren't up to going to. Maybe it's an outside of work gathering, or maybe it's a family gathering that, just you're not up for it. You just are not up for it. You don't have to have an excuse to say no. This doesn't work for me. Or um Maybe someone asks you to host and you're not good with that. I created a video that I put out last week about 5 phrases that you can say that you can have basically in your pocket. I'm pointing at my pocket here to easily say, maybe not so easily at first, but to say no without outright saying no. So I will link that video here on the screen somewhere on the replay. So if you're watching this replay, you can go watch that video where it gives you 5 exact phrases to say when someone asks you to do something or when someone is hurting you and you want to say no or stop or that's not okay with me, but you don't you want to soften it maybe a little bit. And that's, I think, an easier way for people who have always people pleased to start setting boundaries without coming out and saying an outright no, because sometimes it's really hard when we haven't spoken up for ourselves to start speaking up for ourselves. I get it. And so if we can work our way into it a little bit more easily. So watch that video and that will help you with that. So stop over explaining your decisions. You don't have to justify why you're doing something or not doing something or why you said or did something that you did. You don't have to justify or defend. The more reasons you give, the more likely you'll get pushback from the other person because it's like you feel you have to justify what you said or did, which makes you appear unsure or weak. And sometimes that's what other people depend on, your weakness, right? Typically, those are not healthy people, emotionally toxic people. And this zaps you when we explain ourselves, it zaps us of our power. And plus, then it puts the other person in control. Number 9, stop letting other moods affect yours. Don't let your emotions or worth or value get tangled up in theirs. If they're having a down day, don't allow it. You don't have to get down to their level. That's just you can acknowledge their emotions, you can acknowledge what they're going through without feeling the need to fix them or manage them. Um, and don't let their emotions, their bad day dictate who you are. Number 10 is to stop seeking permission. Make choices. And this is a people pleasing habit is to let other people decide, right? Let them make the call. But a couple of things happen here. One is it puts a lot of responsibility on the other person, maybe your partner, for instance. If you're always just like deferring to them and letting them decide, that gets exhausting for the other person. And they can start becoming resentful that you aren't making decisions for yourself, or friends, letting them always be the one to decide where to go for dinner, or what activity to do, or whatever. So stop seeking permission for your choices. And again, as if we grew up people pleasing, we deferred a lot to other people. And so it became a habit. And now maybe you have a belief that you think you'll make the wrong decision, that people will reject you, that they'll judge you if you make a decision that they don't agree with. But this is living externally to you. It's living almost as a victim because you're saying that whatever happens is not in your control. So start making your own decisions. Start depending on yourself. Start trusting your gut, your intuition. And yeah, you'll make some decisions that don't go as planned for sure. But that's part of learning and growing. If we always sit in our safety zone, in the comfort zone, we can't know what path might have been better. If we take a path and it's the wrong one, it's like, okay, well, now I know. Married 3 times, now I know what I was doing that allowed me to take that path 3 times where I allowed them to make the calls. I never spoke up for myself. I won't take that path again. I may get married again, but it will not be with a person who I do not speak my truth with, because I took that path enough times. I made that decision enough times and finally figured out, right? Sometimes we have to make a decision in order to figure out what doesn't work for us. And that's what I did. Number 11, stop trying to make everyone like you. Accept that not everyone will, right? And that's okay. But as people pleasers, people that grew up, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all, wanting that acceptance and that approval, we were taught, right? This habit of thinking everyone should like us, and not everyone's going to like you. I did a I did a video, I'll post that here, whichever side it comes up um, on the 25 things I did to finally be happy in midlife, how I reinvented my life. And um, that video went viral, but a woman commented on there that I should dye my sad gray hair, or wear a wig and put on some more vibrant makeup so I didn't look like such a senior. Not everyone's going to like me. And that comment, at first it was kind of shocking. Um, and it was a little bit, does is she serious about this or what? But um, have you ever had that happen to you where someone has judged you in that way and you like, then you morph yourself to change to try and fit them, but then other commenters responded to her comment and said, "I like her hair the way it is," or, whatever, like, in support of me. So, which do I decide, right? Am I going to do that for them so they'll like me, or am I gonna do that for them so they'll like me? What matters is, do I like me? Right? Do I accept me? Do I approve of me? And that took me a long time to get to the point of where it didn't matter what other people thought of me. It matters what I think of me. Number 12, stop running from discomfort. We've already talked about this. Sit with your discomfort and let them sit with theirs. Stop trying to take them out of their discomfort so that they'll be happy, because that makes you miserable. Believe me, I have lived it. Let the fear of disappointing someone pass without trying to erase it. That's what I had to figure out, that they might be disappointed. Yep, but they're going to have to they're going to have to work through their disappointment. It has nothing to do with me. I'm living my life. I didn't do anything purposefully hurtful to them. It's just me speaking my truth was not what they wanted to hear. And so they're disappointed, they're mad, they're upset. But that does not mean I did anything wrong. Number 13, stop believing your people pleasing thoughts. Stop seeing people pleasing as a good thing. We were taught, right, to be that way, to 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 think that pleasing others was what made us good people. You cannot, I believe now that all of us individually were put here to love and serve other people. You cannot love and serve other people when you're trying to please them, because sometimes when we're pleasing, we're enabling bad behavior, and that is not serving their best interests to enable them. So, and again, I did this. I thought my niceness was helping other people. So I want you to challenge these thoughts because they're habits. Ask yourself, what's the worst thing that will happen if they're disappointed? What's the worst thing that will happen? Maybe it's that the relationship ends. But again, that might be a good indication that they were not meant to be in your life as as um they were just maybe not meant to be in your life. Maybe they were brought into your life to bring you this lesson of stopping stop worrying about pleasing other people, and maybe that's the lesson that they brought to you. Number 14 is stop trying to change your behaviors. We talked about this earlier in the live. I did this for years. I worked on my boundaries, saying no more often, tried to speak up for myself more, but I kept boomeranging back to the old me. And why was that? Because it wasn't about my behaviors, it was about the beliefs that were in my subconscious, the beliefs that I had about myself, that I wasn't worthy, I wasn't deserving of love, I wasn't good enough. So your behaviors will not change until your beliefs change. So stop focusing on your behaviors. And if you want to focus somewhere, I invite you to start focusing on, what do I believe about myself? What are the beliefs that I have? I appreciate you all being here so much. The 15th one is to stop apologizing. A 2015 study explored the emotional consequences of this specific behavior. The research found that individuals who over apologize, particularly in situations where they didn't do anything wrong, right? How often do we apologize for someone bumping into us with their shopping cart, right? They bump into you and you're like, "Oh, sorry, sorry." We have nothing to apologize for. Um, Sorry I didn't text you back right away. That's my big pet peeve. I don't You don't owe anyone an immediate text back unless you said, "I'll text you right back," right? You don't owe anyone you don't owe anyone the need to pick up the phone when it rings, right? If your cell phone rings, you do not have to answer it, even if it's someone that you know. So stop apologizing. So this research found that people who over apologize when especially when they didn't do anything wrong, report lower levels of self-esteem and higher levels of stress. So Paris Mommy, if you're still here, right? Look at how often you're apologizing and try to start becoming aware of how often you're apologizing. I can tell you it's probably multiple times a day. I caught myself apologizing a couple times here in this live stream where I didn't do anything wrong. Oh, Paris Mommy, I apologize all the time for being over emotional. I'm glad you're still here. Thank you. Those apologies, this habit of excessive apologizing, which is what it is, it's a habit. The sorry comes out before we even realize we're doing it. So I want you to start realizing you're doing it and actually stop yourself. So in this live, when I said sorry, I should have said, "Let me back up. I'm not apologizing." And I don't remember what I said sorry for now, but it was nothing I did wrong. Right? And so apologizing, but again, it's a habit. And it indicates to your mind that you're responsible for how others feel. So if someone bumps into you in the grocery store with their shopping cart and you're like, "Sorry," you're indicating to your mind that you're responsible for what they just did. And your mind has no choice. Again, it doesn't act on its own. It can only do what it was programmed to do. So it has no choice to believe you, but to believe you and to act accordingly. So constantly saying sorry to keep the peace or make someone comfortable, right? Which is probably, Paris Mommy, what you do. You apologize when you get emotional. And what is, I would encourage you, invite you to look at, whose yardstick are you using for over emotional? I'm a very emotional person. I cry so easily, and I used to apologize, right? I used to be embarrassed and ashamed of making them uncomfortable for my tears. That is not mine to carry. I am an emotional and sensitive person. That's just the way I am. And so, yes, could I maybe teach myself to not be so emotional? And sometimes the emotions were not what's the right word? The tears sometimes were not didn't the situation did not warrant my emotions, but because I was afraid of disappointing them and hurting their feelings, that's where the emotion came from. It wasn't that I was sad or hurt. I was afraid of what I was doing to them. And so I became emotional because of that. And it was almost like I was emotional in order to, um, take them out of their discomfort. I'd have to think about that a little bit. I was emotional to it was almost like a sabotaging thing that my body became emotional in order to stop me from speaking up, to saying what I needed or wanted to say. And that was something I was taught when I was young, because I was taught, if you know, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. So I learned and I'm assuming when you say over emotional, that's probably what you mean. Maybe it's anger or, that kind of emotion. But usually for women who have people pleased, it is the tears, right? And so just I invite you to look at that and to stop apologizing, because as soon as you can it's kind of all of this in this ball together of it's a cycle that just continues, right? I feel bad for hurting other people, so then I get emotional and then I apologize, and then it's they're all better, but then I feel diminished because I'm apologizing and I can't express how I feel, and it just becomes this wound up tight well, and now that I'm saying that, this wound up tight knot, right? Which is how many people would describe anxiety. So, those are some things, Paris Mommy in particular, for you to um, investigate, right? How is this all tied together? The anxiety, the over emotional, saying sorry, being afraid that other people won't be there for you, right? Caretaking, all of that. How is that all wound up together and keeping you in this anxiety loop? And you, I can tell you, are not alone. People listening to this replay, I know absolutely can relate to that. I totally relate to that. That is, I've finally been able to, in the last few years, express appropriate emotion, right? Express when I'm like, my emotion a lot of times comes out in tears. It's the waterworks, right? It used to be when I would be so upset, so angry that I couldn't speak what I wanted to speak, that's how it came out. Now it comes out in now it's gonna come out now, in pride for who I am and who I've created myself to be, right? It's not an embarrassing thing, it's a self-acceptance, and it's just a like, almost an overwhelming sense of peace and love and joy that I have for the life that I've created, and it will come out a lot of times when I'm talking to other people, when I'm speaking my truth, right? Now, when I speak my truth, it's like, holy crap, I'm really doing it. I'm really speaking up for myself. And it can become emotional because I'm like, I'm doing it and I'm still alive and the sky hasn't fallen, right? And so I become emotional and I may even say to the other person, I'm not sad. I'm just really proud of myself for speaking up. I may actually say that. And I will tell people that I am now committed to telling my truth. And so, because of that commitment to myself, I need to say this to you. And that most likely will make me emotional when I do that. Ah, thank you. She says, I'm so, so happy for you. Yes, it's an amazing, amazing feeling. So stop apologizing, right? Constantly saying sorry to keep the peace or make someone comfortable diminishes your self esteem. And that's what I was doing. It diminished my self esteem and confidence. And so it became this cycle of not speaking up, being hurt, being resentful, and just taking it on, right? In order to keep the other person happy. So I think we'll stop there because that was the main goal of this was what things are we doing to try and keep other people happy in our life. And there you have it. Those are 15 things that I invite you to look at and see what you are doing in your life that is creating this cycle and this devastating cycle of being afraid to disappoint someone and always being worried about keeping them happy. So I really appreciate all of you being here watching. If you're watching on the replay, um, I appreciate that as well. If you're watching on the replay and something resonates with you, I would love for you to put it down in the comments. And which one of these 15 do you need to go to work on first? It possibly is number 15, the sorry, right? Saying sorry. Start making, put a little sticky note, take it with you and write down how many times you say sorry in a day. And I think you'll be amazed at how often it happens. And then start breaking that habit. I appreciate you being here. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next live stream next Sunday at 10:10 Central Time or 11:10 Eastern Time. I'll see you here.